everybody can hear me, I'll just not mess with it. Like Ms. Miles said, my images are on, or my presentations on blue Van Dykes. It's a process, or it's a process that combines cyanotypes and Van Dykes. Both were created by, let me see if I can make this work. Okay. Both were developed by Sir John Herschel, the same person who also helped create the salt print that Stephanie was just talking about. The cyanotype process uses ammonium iron citrate and potassium ferrocyanide, which turns blue with the exposure to ultraviolet lights, which you can use the sunshine, you can use an ultraviolet light box. And it is initially used for making the original blueprints, so they copied images and maps and everything like that for blueprints. Van Dykes are a mixture of silver nitrate, tartaric acid, and ferric ammonium citrate. This combination of silver and iron turns the print brown. You can kind of do different colors with that, like adding 1% gold chloride makes it more of a purple brown. Adding, like diluting it with distilled water makes it more of like an orange coloring brown. Up here, there's an example of our blue cyanotype, and the lower one is a brown Van Dyke. To understand the blue Van Dyke, you kind of have to understand the steps to the cyanotype and the Van Dyke. For the cyanotype, you coat the watercolor paper with the light-sensitive cyanotype chemicals and allow it to dry. You have to mix two separate cyanotype chemicals together right before coating it in order for it to coat correctly. You use a cyanotype curved digital negative that you print off of the computer. This uses clear translucent printing paper to make a digital negative, and then you expose it in sunlight or the UV box for 5 to 45 minutes, just depending on your negative. It's a touch and go process. You just never know what it's going to do. You check the exposure every few minutes, and as soon as it's slightly lighter than what you really think it should be, you take it out and you rinse it in water. You wash the final image in distilled water to remove the excess chemicals, and then add a splash of hydrogen peroxide to speed up the process, and it turns the image a really rich dark blue. And this is like the exciting point that everybody just loves because it just instantly turns it blue. And you let the image wash in running water for about 5 minutes, and then you let it dry, and then there you have your cyanotype image. The Van Dyke is a little bit different. You coat the paper, like the same watercolor paper, with the Van Dyke chemicals and allow it to dry, and then you use a different digital negative with the Van Dyke curve instead of the cyanotype curve. You expose it to the UV light, which usually works best under the UV light box instead of the sunshine because it's more steady. It's a shorter exposure time than the cyanotype. It takes about 1 to 5 minutes to expose a Van Dyke. You remove it from the light, similar to the cyanotype, but when it's a little less dark than you think it should be. You wash the final image in distilled water for 5 minutes, then tap water for an additional 3 minutes. The third bath is the fixer. This washes away all of the unexposed silver nitrate and keeps the Van Dyke from continuing to expose. Then you let the image wash in running water for 35 or 40 minutes, and then you let it dry. So the final wash time is a lot longer on the Van Dyke than the cyanotype. So the actual blue Van Dyke process, it starts with an overexposed cyanotype image. You want it to be overexposed because the Van Dyke chemicals that you're going to coat over it will completely bleach out the cyanotype if you're not careful. Cyanotype chemicals on watercolor paper allow it to dry. Oh, I'm sorry. So you start off by making a cyanotype and overexposing it. Once you put it through the washes and allow it to dry, the image is ready for the Van Dyke chemicals. So you just completely make a cyanotype, and then you're going to put the entire Van Dyke process over the top of that image. What I do is I dilute the Van Dyke chemistry with distilled water. I experimented with 1 to 2 and 1 to 4 water to chemical ratios. It changes the color a little bit, but nothing in this process is really steady anyways, so it doesn't really make a difference. So when you coat it over the cyanotype, you want to kind of watch it because it will bleach it out, and the more you coat, the more it's going to bleach. It will instantly bleach the blue and completely take away the pale blue highlights. Without dilution, the blue Van Dyke tends to take away everything except for the darkest blue shadows. This is, oops, I didn't put this, I'm sorry. This is one of the examples where it bleached out almost all of the blue and it left the Van Dyke, but you can still see some of the darkest blue from my cyanotype that's underneath it. Once the image is dry, you use the Van Dyke curved digital negative to expose the second image, which is the Van Dyke image. You play around with 2 different images, or you can use the same image overlapping, but you want to put it off register a little bit, otherwise you're just going to see, it's either going to look really blurry or you won't see the blue underneath the Van Dyke. It'll just cover it and be like a little bit of a different color for the Van Dyke. You want to wash it. The washing is a little bit different on these. You want to wash it with distilled water for about 5 minutes and then the tap water. But then you want to go straight from the tap water to running water for a few minutes because the fix for the Van Dyke will completely wash away the cyanotype. It just makes it completely disappear. So you can't fix the Van Dyke, and that is a problem because Van Dykes fade. This is one that I experimented with. It's part of my series that I made. But this is an example of why the fixer for the Van Dyke is necessary because it fades out a lot. In order to save the cyanotype, though, you can't fix the Van Dyke. It will never stop exposing to light. This one I put out in light on purpose to see how fast the fade ratio is. And it was very quick. This is a couple of days, or not a couple of days, a couple of weeks just in my bedroom, hanging up. And so when you hang shows, if you hang blue Van Dykes, they're always going to continuously fade a little bit and a little bit more. So in my personal work, I don't have it anymore. My personal work, I use the fading Van Dyke as a strong element. I base it off the emotional pull that someone's words can have over a person over long periods of time, even when they're meant to be harmless. The effect of people's words can have a heavy effect on people's lives, whether it be positive or negative. My blue Van Dykes represent the negative impact people hold over their lives and how time and exposure to positive beliefs can make the negatives fade. The images shown throughout this entire work has been part of my work entitled I'm the Blue Van Dyke. Down here, so I didn't turn off this page. So my artist statement for this work, this is my whole series that I have hung up. I had 42 in total, so this is a few of them. And my artist statement was, your words have hurt me for so long. They hold more influence than you could think. You say that there is no point in trying because I might not succeed, but I will never succeed without first trying. Is it not worth failing in life 100 times if finally you can have one success? Look at these images and you may see what I have become. I started off a pure and beautiful blue. You are the brown in my life. See how ugly you can be? This process is creating by having a cyanotype and covering it with a Van Dyke brown chemical. The damage or color from the Van Dyke all depends on the dilution of the chemical. Sometimes it translucently covers the blue and your influence is hardly noticeable, yet other times the brown encases the cyanotype completely and there is very little blue to be seen. But I have learned that the cyanotype is more resilient. You see that if the Van Dyke is not fixed correctly, it will slowly fade away when exposed to light. It takes time, but eventually the negative thoughts that you have always embedded into me will fade, just like your brown counterpart. I cannot resent you, as I would sometimes like. If I had never experienced your negativity, then I would not be nearly as strong as I am today. This is who I am. And so for my work, I use pictures of myself and my family and me as a baby. And there's a lot of different experimentations. There's different colorings. I'm not sure how to use the pointer. But for down here, there's orangey colors. Up here it is very, very brown. The colors vary in all of the work, so I like it because of the differences that it creates. And that